Imagine a world before radio or TV, where evenings meant quiet recitals and local theatre. Into this world came Franz Liszt, a force of nature who turned music into spectacle. His fame sparked Lisztomania. Fans swooned, fought for souvenirs and packed concert halls in a frenzy. Liszt became the first true rock star, inventing a new kind of fame that changed music forever. Before Liszt, musicians played for aristocrats, not crowds. Liszt shattered the rules. He became the first true musical idol, mobbed by fans, his image everywhere. But at his peak, he walked away, searching for meaning beyond fame. This is the story of a world unprepared for a superstar. Franz Liszt was born in the quiet village of Reding, far from Europe's glittering capitals. His father, Adam, was a clerk and amateur musician who dreamed of passing his passion to his son. From the start, young Franz was captivated by music, playing piano by 6 and astonishing everyone with his gift. Adam knew Franz's talent was too great for Reding. He had to show the world. Adam Liszt risked everything, leaving his secure job to nurture his son Franz's musical gift. In 1822, they journeyed to Vienna, the heart of music, with only hope and talent. Franz's playing stunned Carl Czerny, who agreed to teach him for free. Soon, even Beethoven recognized Franz's genius, cementing his place as a legend. With Beethoven's symbolic blessing, the doors of Vienna flew open for young Franz. He was no longer a curiosity, he was a celebrity. Invitations poured in from the highest echelons of society. Every aristocrat, every patron of the arts, wanted the little Liszt to perform at their private gatherings. He became the talk of the town, a boy wonder who could command the attention of an entire room with his electrifying presence. He played for emperors and princes, his small figure seated at the grand pianos of magnificent palaces. For a boy from a tiny village, it must have been a dizzying and overwhelming experience, a world of unimaginable opulence. His father, Adam, managed his career with shrewd determination. He was not just a proud parent, he was a brilliant publicist and manager. He understood the importance of image and story. The tale of Beethoven's kiss was repeated everywhere, adding a layer of myth to his son's growing fame. Adam carefully curated Franz's public appearances, ensuring he was always seen in the best light, always leaving the audience wanting more. He knew that talent alone was not enough. To succeed at this level, one needed to create a legend, an aura of greatness that went beyond the music itself. He was building the foundations of a phenomenon. During this time, Franz's own artistry was developing at a breathtaking pace. Under the tutelage of Czerny, his technique became flawless, a perfect vehicle for his passionate musical instincts. He was also studying composition with Antonio Salieri, the famous court composer. He was absorbing everything the city had to offer, not just its music, but its culture, its languages, and its sophisticated social codes. He was transforming from a rustic prodigy into a polished cosmopolitan artist. He learned how to charm an audience not just with his hands, but with his wit and his developing charisma, qualities that would become hallmarks of his later fame. But Vienna, for all its glory, was just a stepping stone. Adam's ambitions were even greater. He saw Paris as the next and most important prize. Paris was the true heart of European artistic and intellectual life in the 1820s. It was the city of romance, revolution, and high fashion. It was where reputations were made or broken. To conquer Paris would be to conquer Europe. And so, after a triumphant and profitable period in Vienna, Adam once again packed their bags. In late 1823, father and son set out for the French capital, ready to unleash Franz's genius on a new and even more demanding stage. Arriving in Paris was like stepping into the center of the universe. The city was a whirlwind of energy, a hub of artists, writers, poets, and revolutionaries. It was here that the Romantic movement was in full swing, celebrating individual genius, passionate emotion, and the heroic artist. Paris was the perfect environment for a talent like Franz Liszt. However, the city was also fiercely competitive and notoriously difficult to impress. The Paris Conservatoire, the most prestigious music school in the world, had a strict rule against admitting foreigners. When Liszt applied, he was summarily rejected, a sharp and unexpected blow to his pride. This rejection, however, proved to be a blessing in disguise. It forced Adam to pursue a different path, one outside the rigid confines of the academic establishment. Instead of becoming a student, Franz would present himself as a fully formed artist, a master in his own right. Adam arranged a series of concerts, marketing his son as the boy who had been blessed by Beethoven and had already conquered Vienna. The Parisian public, always intrigued by a good story and a touch of scandal, was curious. His debut concert in the city was a carefully managed event, designed to create maximum impact and generate intense buzz. The performance was a triumph. The Parisians were stunned. They had never heard a piano played with such ferocity and such delicate nuance. It was as if an entire orchestra was emanating from a single instrument. He played with a theatricality that was captivating, his body swaying with the music, his long hair flying. It was a performance for the eyes as well as the ears. The critics, who were so often cynical, wrote rave reviews. They compared him to a force of nature, a young god of the piano. In a city that worshipped genius, Franz Liszt had arrived and announced himself as its newest deity. Overnight, he became the darling of the Parisian salons. He was sought after by the city's intellectual and social elite, from the writer Victor Hugo to the painter Eugène Delacroix. He was no longer just a musician, he was a personality, a figure at the heart of the cultural zeitgeist. He was handsome, intelligent, and possessed an undeniable magnetism. But this period was also marked by personal tragedy. In 1827, his beloved father and manager, Adam, died suddenly of typhoid fever. At just 15 years old, Franz was left alone in Paris, heartbroken and forced to navigate his burgeoning fame all by himself. His childhood was officially over. After his father's death, Liszt withdrew, but soon returned, inspired by Paganini's virtuosity. His concerts sparked a frenzy so intense, the word Lisztomania was born. Audiences wept, fainted and surged forward, worshipping Liszt as an idol, not just an artist. What made a Liszt concert so electrifying? He broke tradition, performing solo and turning the piano sideways so the audience could see every dramatic gesture. His fingers flew, his passion was visible, and every concert felt unique, dangerous, unpredictable and thrilling. Liszt didn't just play music, he commanded the room, taking audiences on an unforgettable emotional journey. Lisztomania swept beyond the concert hall, turning Franz Liszt into a brand and icon. His image was everywhere, on brooches, snuff boxes and posters. Fans fought for his belongings, even collecting cigar butts and coffee dregs. Liszt crafted a romantic, charismatic persona, artist, hero and star. He set the blueprint for every celebrity who followed. Life on tour during the years of Lisztomania was a whirlwind of chaos, adoration, and honestly, logistical nightmares. Travel in the 1840s was arduous. It involved long, uncomfortable journeys by horse-drawn carriage over poorly maintained roads. Yet Liszt maintained a punishing schedule, sometimes playing several concerts in different towns in the same week. Everywhere he went, his arrival was heralded. Crowds would gather for miles outside a town just to catch a glimpse of his carriage. In many cities, his arrival was treated like a state visit, with local dignitaries and marching bands greeting him at the gates. The scenes at the concert venues were often pure pandemonium. Tickets were sold out weeks in advance, and scalpers made fortunes, selling them at exorbitant prices. People who couldn't get tickets would climb onto rooftops or hang from windows of adjacent buildings, hoping to hear even a faint echo of the music. Inside, the halls were dangerously overcrowded. Promoters would sell standing room only tickets until people were packed in so tightly they could barely breathe. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation long before Liszt even appeared. His very presence was enough to ignite the room into a frenzy of cheers and applause. His journey through Berlin in the winter of 1841 became legendary. The city was gripped by Lisztomania for weeks. 30,000 people applied for tickets to his concerts in a hall that could only seat a fraction of that number. Students unhitched the horses from his carriage and insisted on pulling it through the streets themselves, a tribute usually reserved for royalty. After one concert, he was followed by a mob of admirers who refused to let him go. He had to be smuggled out of a back door and escaped through a series of private gardens to get back to his hotel, a scene straight out of a modern celebrity chase. These stories were repeated across the continent. In his native Hungary, he was hailed as a national hero. His concerts there were patriotic events and he was showered with honours and gifts. In Russia, the Tsar himself attended his performances and the aristocracy showered him with jewels. But this constant state of excitement took its toll. He was perpetually exhausted, living out of suitcases and moving from one wave of hysteria to the next. He was a prisoner of his own fame, swept along by a tidal wave of adoration that he had created but could no longer control. While the world saw a triumphant demigod, the reality for Franz Liszt was far more complex. The constant touring and the relentless pressure to perform at a superhuman level were, honestly, physically and mentally draining. He suffered from bouts of exhaustion and illness and would often have to postpone concerts. The man on stage was a picture of virile passion, but behind the scenes he was, more often than not, a lonely and depleted figure. He lived in a state of perpetual motion, with no real home and very little time for quiet reflection. The adoration of thousands could not fill the void left by a lack of genuine, peaceful human connection. The nature of his fame also brought immense psychological burdens. Lisztomania was not just positive admiration, it was, in fact, invasive and suffocating. He had no privacy. Everywhere he went he was watched, followed and mobbed. His fans felt they owned a piece of him, demanding his time and attention. He was expected to be charming, brilliant and generous at all times. This constant performance, both on and off the stage, was a heavy mask to wear. He was playing the role of Liszt, the superstar from morning until night, with no respite from the public's insatiable gaze. It was a golden cage, glittering and luxurious, but a cage nonetheless. Furthermore, the very nature of his fame began to conflict with his deeper artistic and spiritual aspirations. He was celebrated as a virtuoso, a showman who could perform incredible technical feats, but Liszt was also a profound and serious composer, and he felt that his celebrity was overshadowing his true musical legacy. The crowd screamed for his flashy, crowd-pleasing pieces, but he yearned to create more substantial, innovative works. He was trapped by the expectations he himself had created. The circus of Lisztomania was really a distraction from the more serious, introspective art he felt compelled to pursue. This growing disillusionment planted a seed in his mind. He began to question the value of this chaotic life. What was the purpose of all this adoration if it left him feeling empty and artistically unfulfilled? The cheers of the crowd began to sound hollow. He was the most famous musician in the world, a man who had everything: fame, wealth, and the love of millions. Yet he started to feel a profound sense of dissatisfaction, a spiritual hunger that his celebrity lifestyle could not satisfy. At the very height of his glory, Franz Liszt began to contemplate the unthinkable, walking away from it all. Franz Liszt's private life was a whirlwind of scandalous romance. His affair with Marie d'Agoult, a brilliant Parisian countess, defied society and inspired his greatest works. Together, they chose passion and freedom over convention, living the very ideal of romantic love, even as it ultimately tore them apart. Liszt was the sun around which Romantic-era stars orbited, friends with Hugo, Delacroix and Lamartine, and rivals with Chopin and Thalberg. Paris was split. Lisztians versus Thalbergians, each pianist dazzling crowds in legendary duels. In the end, Liszt stood alone, a force beyond comparison. Franz Liszt was known for his showmanship, but even more for his generosity. He gave away much of his fortune, supported fellow artists, and taught hundreds of students for free. Liszt championed new composers, raised money for causes, and even funded the Beethoven Monument in Bonn himself. A grand gesture, but one born of genuine reverence and kindness. Franz Liszt was a man of contradictions, spiritual yet drawn to worldly temptations, a showman who craved crowds but longed for solitude. His intellect matched his musical genius, but fame left him lonely and weary. As applause faded, Liszt yearned for deeper meaning, setting the stage for a dramatic turning point in his life. In 1847, Liszt met Princess Caroline zu Wittgenstein, a brilliant, spiritual Polish noblewoman. She saw him not just as a celebrity, but as a prophet, urging him to leave the stage and dedicate himself to composition. With her support, Liszt found the courage to abandon fame and pursue his true artistic destiny. The world was stunned. Franz Liszt, the king of the piano, was stepping away at his peak. After years of electrifying crowds, his final paid concert in 1847 passed quietly, unnoticed, as a historic farewell. At just 36, Liszt left behind the frenzy of Lisztomania, choosing silence and the uncertain path of a composer. He sought a new life with Caroline and the creative freedom to write the ambitious music that touring never allowed. The curtain fell on his era as a superstar. A new revolutionary act was about to begin. Liszt didn't retire. He reinvented himself in Weimar as Kapellmeister, transforming the town into a hub of musical innovation. With Caroline's support, he championed radical composers, conducted daring premieres, and mentored young talent. The Altenburg became a vibrant centre for artists, as Liszt led the new German school and waged war on musical conservatism. No longer a solo idol, he became the visionary leader of the avant-garde. In Weimar, Liszt found stability, purpose, and a new way to shape music history. Free from touring, Liszt unleashed a torrent of revolutionary music in Weimar, bold, experimental, and often misunderstood. He invented the symphonic poem, reimagined the piano sonata, and redefined the relationship between soloist and orchestra. His focus shifted from crowd-pleasing virtuosity to profound, lasting works for posterity. This period cemented his legacy as a composer, not just a performer. Liszt proved that true artistic greatness means stepping out of the spotlight to create something enduring. Liszt's influence didn't end in Weimar. He later became Abbé Liszt in Rome, adding spiritual depth to his legend. He revolutionized the piano, pushing its evolution and inspiring generations of composers with his daring innovations. His music paved the way for Wagner, Strauss, and Debussy, breaking classical constraints and expanding music's expressive power. Liszt also invented the modern celebrity, living the script of the pop idol long before rock and roll. Every superstar who commands a stage today owes something to the path Liszt blazed. Liszt's life unfolded in 3 acts: the dazzling virtuoso, the visionary mentor, and the spiritual seeker. He conquered Europe as a performer, then transformed music from behind the scenes in Weimar, and finally sought meaning in faith and radical late works. Each phase could stand alone, but together they reveal a restless artist constantly reinventing himself. Liszt's journey shows that an artist's life can be a series of bold transformations, not a single story. He expanded what it means to be an artist, living enough for 3 men. Liszt's story is the original blueprint for modern fame, a parable of the intoxicating and perilous power of celebrity. He lived both the ecstasy and the emptiness of adoration, ultimately choosing artistic integrity over applause. His legacy asks, is true greatness found in fleeting fame or in lasting creation? Liszt's life was an epic of ambition, reinvention, and wisdom. He was the first rock star, but also so much more. He remains a category all his own, a timeless model for artists everywhere.